back with another episode of Coffee with April, and this time it's time to talk about subscription coffee once again. We have the subscription for the June coming up, and we're really excited to be able to introduce one of our fresh crop Kenyan coffees for this. So the coffee that we have chosen come from the area of Kiambu, which is basically just north of Nairobi, and it comes from a process station called Gathiruini that it owns by a collective called Komothai. Now, these guys actually have 13 different process stations, and Gathiruini is one of those, right? So what's interesting here is that throughout all of the processing stations are actually processing the coffee exactly the same. Now, this is a wash processed coffee that goes through several different washing process and grade processes with a finished table drying of about 14 days. And what's exciting here is, and we're starting to see this more and more, is that the varietal constellation is SL28, SL34 as traditional, as well as Bathian. Now, Bathian is one of the resistant varietals, and this is sometimes a good thing, sometimes not a good thing. We find taste-wise what happens whenever you find Bathian varietals in the Kenyan coffee, you get a lot more sweetness to the coffee and a bit more body. Sometimes that can tip over and be a bit too much, but I think with this coffee we find some kind of perfect balance, pushing these flavors from traditional kind of wild berries into a more tropical yellow experience, which we're going to talk about a bit more later. So first, a few kind of tiny details about the coffee, as we said. So it grows in Kiambu. It grows up on 1,800 meters, which is very high, as we all know. Not the highest in Kenya, but what we find quite often with Kenyan coffee is when they grow a tiny bit lower, below 2,000, they can actually generate this beautiful kind of sweet character to the coffee, which some of the very high altitude lots seem to actually don't have. So we think this is pretty cool. Now the flavor notes that we're finding in the coffee is exciting, and as I told you, they're more on the yellow side than the blue or red side that we might expect in a normal Kenyan coffee. We're going to find a lot of passion fruit. We're going to find a lot of jasmine floral qualities, which is really exciting, and we'll find as well as black currant, which is kind of a reoccurring feature in Kenyan coffees, but that's also part of why we like it. The intensity in the cup is really high. Sweetness comes up front with tropical fruits, and as it cools down, the black currant becomes more dominant. Now, in terms of roasting this coffee, that was a really interesting experience, which it always is when it comes to Kenyan coffees. This is what we're looking at, a total roast time on 9 minutes and 18 seconds, which is a bit shorter than what we normally do. But we wanted to do that to really kind of bring out the vibrancy in the coffee. From a roasting perspective, it's important for us to highlight the coffees for what it is. And at Kenyan coffee, we want really vibrant because that's really exciting, right? So shorter roast time definitely increases a bit of vibrancy in this specific cup, and that's why we're really excited to do it. We're looking at a top rate of rise here around 18 on a 30-second rate of rise setting. Again, working with a loring, think about the probes. They're not going to be the same as your probe if you don't have a loring at home. We're going in with a crack rate of rise around 5, and we're finishing around 2.4 with an end temperature of 206.4, which again is on the lighter spectrum of what we usually work with. But it comes down to the vibrancy that we get out of it, and we're really excited for that, and we're happy to be able to bring it out. Now, moving forward, brewing this coffee. So we have a coffee that is roasted relatively quick, right? And with that, the coffee is getting a lot of vibrancy. We have varietals that are kind of known for their acidity and structure in general. So what we're looking at here is how can we make this coffee sweeter? That's really the focus. And a tip when it comes to brewing coffee sweeter is to actually make sure to brew with a slightly higher brew temperature, right? So the higher the temperature, the more sugars you're extracting from the coffee. So we're pushing this with a 94 degrees Celsius start temperature, which for us is relatively high. Using a flatbed brewer rather than a cone brewer. Again, a flatbed brewer for us generates a bit more body balance and increasing the harmony in the cup as it cools down. So a V60 of this coffee would be very vibrant, very acidic, which is really cool as well. But if you're really looking for that balance, I recommend a flatbed brewer. We're brewing this with a 1:16 brew ratio. You can go up all the way to 1:17. I find when you work with this really high quality coffees with so much flavor complexity, you can really afford to push that out a lot more, which is generating a really cool kind of flavor quality in the end. Now, apart from that, you can see this reference. We have already videos of the kind of recipe that I'm referencing to, but so 1:16 brew ratio. Recommending to dividing your pours into 4 pours and count the, basically for each pour, make sure you work with the grind size where you can have all of the water go through within 30 seconds of each pour. Spread the pours out so you end up with a total brew time around 3 minutes. That was about it for this time. Again, we're gonna roast this coffee Tuesday, so in a few days from now. We're gonna ship it out to all of you. And please have a look at the video. Let us know what you think about the coffee. We're always happy when you guys comment. Notes down here as always. If you have any questions, just let us know. And thank you again for watching.